On this episode of Shannon Ayers Speaks, I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing a 9-time Grammy nominated songwriter, singer, author, wears so many different hats. We got to engage in a wonderful conversation of getting to know them on a personal level. So I hope you enjoy as Shannon Ayers speaks with the incomparable Kelly Price. Okay. We want to welcome you to Hello Beautiful. Shannon Ayers Speaks with the incomparable Kelly Price, 9-time Grammy nominated singer, songwriter, author, mom, actress, and 10,000 other roles. Still looking like you're 22, really?
God bless you. I do not feel years old.
Oh my gosh.
Not today.
But I tell you what I find interesting is we both are the same age. But I can remember following your career, from my high school days, on up. I know you really came on the background scene as far as being a backup singer and so on and so forth. But I will just say it's just an honor, to fast forward this many years to be able to sit here and engage with you in this forum. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much. You're welcome. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's indeed my pleasure. So we'll just dive right in, if that's okay. You started off as a little kid singing in the church. Did you understand that it wasn't just singing, but a gift?
So, wow. What's crazy is I think probably the younger I was, the less my understanding was of how special it was. And I say that because the younger I was, the fewer people I was exposed to prior to going to school and preschool and that kind of thing, because everyone in my house did sing and everyone in my family, like even my mother's siblings. So her siblings, they said when I was around my aunt, she sang, and she was around my uncle before his death, he sang, he played, he wrote music. My grandmother played piano and organ and she sang. And so literally as a very young child, I didn't understand that it was special or a gift. I actually thought everybody did it because everybody in my immediate world did it. I didn't realize until starting school at 3 and 4 years old that everybody didn't sing.
I thought a culture for you.
I thought it was a part of our language, honestly.
Yeah.
And I can honestly remember the first time I actually tuned in to someone at school that was out of tune. Very, we do these single class and that kind of thing. Yeah. And it was weird because everything that I'd been surrounded by up until that point was musical.
Right.
And surroundings. So I really didn't know and I have a very good memory. I have a memory that goes back, which is weird. Not a lot of people have it, but I actually have memory that goes back to when I was really young.
Yeah.
And did not realize that everyone didn't do it until I started going to school and that kind of thing. And I realized that, no, this is something else. Everybody doesn't do what mommy and my dad and my aunt and my uncle and my grandma, everybody doesn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's indeed special. It really, because we're gonna be real here. We know everybody can't do what you do,
but you know what? I can't do what they do. So it's all good. For real. Yeah, seriously, if y'all needed me, I tried to prove a point when I first came out and I had my 8 count for 16 bars or whatever it was that I did just to show that big girls can move too. But I'm not trying to do what Beyonce does.
Right.
I'm not built for that at all. And it's not even a size. I'm just not coordinated like that.
Right.
So God knew he was going to have me in this arena. He gave me what I needed to stand out without having to be that. So God for the
I
Beyonces
get it.
and all of them that can do that stuff. That is not your girl. I could give you 8 bars, 16 bars maximum with something very well choreographed to suit my ability to do that and still give you a good quality Kelly Price vocal.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally get it. You know, when my husband and I are watching Masked Singer, it's like a running joke because Patti LaBelle, Gladys Knight, Shaka Khan, Dionne Warwick. Okay, any and everybody that grew up with these folk from the moment they opened up their mouths knew who they were.
Absolutely.
And when they were calling out names, I was offended. I was offended. And so I put you in that category. You know, there is only one Kelly Price.
Appreciate that.
Only one. And I could be all right about that. No. No. I think you're awesome. I'm not just souping you up because I'm sitting here talking to you. I wouldn't be talking to you if I didn't think that you were awesome. Just following your career and everything you've done, even the highs and the lows, you know, we were there with you.
Yeah.
That journey.
Living your life out in front of the public eye. Living your life out in front of the public eye. So there's from it. When there's life, people get to see it. When there's death, people get to see it. When there's happy times, they see it. When there's sad times, they'll see it. When it's sickness, they see it. When it's good health, they see it. When it's like a marriage, really, honestly, literally. Right. When you accept living a life in the public eye, it has its disproportionate moments of feeling like, God, this isn't fair. I just need a break. Can I just take a break? Can I get a minute?
Yes.
But it's disproportionate on the other side of things too. And so I've been quoting a lot of Bishop Jakes since we've been on lockdown here. I always do a lot more now these days than I have.
Yes.
It's really, it's being able to stand the blessing. Can you handle it? Can you handle it? It is a blessing, but with the blessing, with more of the good stuff also comes more of everything else too. And so you have to be prepared to deal with increase in every area, not just in the areas that you want it in when you find yourself in a situation that you have an abundance of something. So yes, it's a great gift, but it also comes with great responsibility. I accepted that a long time ago because when you have a voice that the people will hear, you need to take heed of what comes out of your mouth and you got to own it, even when it's not the right thing.
Yes.
So, but that's lessons learned because we weren't born in the public eye. We're learning it as we go.
Absolutely.
We're learning it as we go because there was no social media when I got signed.
Yes. And thank God in a way. I mean, we're social media, we will not down social media because it definitely has its benefits and pluses and it adds to our markets today. So there is a benefit. The downside of it is the level of confidence it gives people behind a keyboard, you know, that is very destructive. And also, I would use the word dishonest.
It is dishonest. It's disrespectful in some instances. And again, there we go with the blessing of it.
Yes.
Along with the other side of it too. And I think that there are a lot of people, me, myself being one of them, who when social media became prevalent and started becoming one of those things that was necessary, because I avoided it for as long as I possibly could. Even though I had pages, I didn't do it a lot. I understand the importance of it now and why it's a necessary tool moving forward in the world. Just being able to stay connected. Look at where we are now. We're able to stay connected with family, friends, with the rest of the world, with our constituents, with fans, with supporters.
This interview now.
Thank God for social media. But I think that the world overall, and I'll just speak for myself, it was a tool that we had to learn how to use
responsibly.
Perhaps not even understanding the power of it. And how broad it was and how wide it was. And when you hear all people can see you on the other side of the world, you can hear that, but you don't really get it until some, college kid from Nairobi, sends you a message on social media like, oh my God, I love you. And you're like, geez, they can't see it.
I know.
Yeah. Like it's made the world a lot smaller. And in some ways that's good because we need each other.
Sure.
But in the ways where it has taken us out of personal space, even prior to the country's lockdown.
Oh, yes.
I didn't like that because I grew up in an era where you actually had to pick up the phone and speak to somebody. It wasn't just, You look forward to gatherings. And those are things that perhaps we took for granted that, you know, in a post-COVID world, we will no longer do that.
Right, right. Absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail dead on the head. You know, what I found, even as a young kid, and I think I was probably always before my time, but when it came to celebrity, I never felt an entitlement to know everything about a celebrity.
Yeah.
You know, even having the guilty pleasure of reading certain things or, you know, finding out about certain things, I've never felt a sense of entitlement into a celebrity's personal life because I always made it personal about me. Like I wouldn't want anybody in my business. And I used to get, I was that kid. I was fussing about everything, you know, no, you know, this, that, or the other. And even today, now older and a bit more mature and a bit more wiser, it really irritates me.
Yeah, no, it is not an easy thing to deal with. And again, it's one of those things where I've had to tell myself, Kelly, it's the world that we live in. Yes. But I didn't grow up in that era. I'm 47 years old. And so I get it. Like I remember when celebrity had a mystique to it. It had a bit of mystique to it. What you heard about someone was what came on the news or perhaps the news entertainment shows that were lifestyle, like this is back when Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous was
current affairs. Yes.
God, like that was special for us because you didn't get to see what they had for breakfast, picking out what they were going to wear for the day, what they had for lunch, 11,000 selfies a day. Like that, a sighting was even more rare.
Oh yeah.
So there was another level of like awe and respect. I think that we had because, and it wasn't an entitlement. You were grateful.
Right.
You were like it felt like something special. And because this is now the new normal, I think this generation doesn't understand how special that maybe it is.
Or boundaries.
They can always, I don't like something they do. I could just go up underneath their post on Instagram and tell them I think you stink. You know, like. And,
absolutely. With no responsibility of the human effect. Okay, you're a celebrity. You have a great voice. You have money. So you'll be okay. You know, I'm sitting over here miserable in my life and I can talk about you. It doesn't affect you. You have no feelings, right?
It doesn't raise the dead. Money doesn't heal sick people. It can help you get medicine, but money doesn't do that. Being famous doesn't do that. We still are subject to all of the human feelings and the humanity that everyday citizens and people deal with. And we do it under a scope.
Yes.
Under a scope, perhaps in some of the most vulnerable times of our lives where we don't want to see a camera.
Absolutely. Or I can imagine.
Or, you know, it is what it is. We kind of have to just deal with what it is because that's what it is.
Absolutely. I guess, you know, it's like the Bible says, too much is given, much is required. You know, I totally get it. We're going to dial back just a little bit to talk just a little bit more. Okay. So when you put it out there, when you said no question was off limits, you know, I will tell you what my goal is first and foremost, because you have a lot of celebrities that may have gone through different things and people are looking for their 15 minutes of fame and their gotcha moments. That is not me.
Gotcha.
No, it's not me. Hello Beautiful is just like what it says on my website. You know, it's about helping women to understand our beauty by design and to know our value and to know our worth. And the reason why I thought that you would resonate, well, I know that you would resonate with people is to humanize you. And so that people can understand that there was a beginning and there was some things that led up to the Kelly Price that we know and love today. All of it. So if anything is uncomfortable or if anything is, you know, I'm good, you know.
I am actually, I feel like there's an answer to every question.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then
people have to want to know the truth though.
Yes, absolutely. Which is another reason why I'm doing this. Absolutely. So in my research, just making sure that I was prepared for our interview, I watched just like a lot of your different interviews, both in video and in script. And I read you were raped at the age of 3 by a cousin. What effect did that have on you both then and now, and professionally as well as personally?
Gosh, let me just say that I am very aware that I am not a unicorn. I think that we found, particularly maybe in as it gets talked about more now than it ever had been. More people are coming out and talking about it. And I think what we're finding is that it happened to a lot of us. And for most of us, we were young, and it happened in a place that was supposed to be safe. And at 3 years old, again, this is where having a really good memory from being a really young child, I think sometimes isn't a fun thing, because I do remember all the detail of it, and it was a family member. And it was during a time when my mother and my father were going through some other things. She had to leave us with a relative when she went into the hospital to have my baby sister. And that's actually when it happened, when she left us with family, when she went into the hospital to have my baby sister. And so in hindsight, now I can see how it shaped. I don't want to say it shaped me, because I really believe that we can come out above, be different, and it not mold who we become. But I can see where it affected a lot of the way my relationships were set up, the way I process things. I can remember as an adolescent, as a preteen, as a tween, not wanting to be touched, the way I reacted to certain things, how I processed things, how I interpreted things, as a result of being violated at such a young age. And then, of course, it happened many times after that. Unfortunately, as a kid that was raised in a single parent home, where there was a lot of struggle, where we were without a place to live a lot of times, that kind of thing, I found myself in places and in situations that perhaps weren't always ideal for a young kid. That's my alarm telling me that I'm talking to you. Everything is just going crazy in the background, but it did. But in that, I believe that there is a spiritual and emotional healing that can take place. It's not easy, though. I mean, you have to choose to want to be healed, and it sounds to say that, but it isn't really. Because when you know that you've been violated or you've been done wrong by a person, sometimes the only way we can feel justified is to hold on to our justification in feeling the way we feel. And it's not that you're not right, but I had to, at some point, teach myself that it didn't benefit me to hold on to, in many situations. I'm not even just talking about that initial one now, but because it did affect so many things, and relationships and situations in the years that would follow, I had to, in perhaps maybe just this stage of my life, I would say maybe the last 5 to 7 years, been a reckoning within that I am really, really proud of. It hasn't been a perfect walk, but it has been an aware one. So even if I perhaps misstepped or misspoke or processed something wrong initially because I was seeing it through my old lenses and not through my new ones that I've intentionally now chosen to wear. It's easy for me to go back and say, no, that was me. I was wrong. I'm sorry. Let me try to figure out what this really is. And it's not what I think it is. It's something else. Because you have to. It's sometimes easy to slip back into an old pattern when that's been your way of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there has been a reckoning with me. There's a reckoning and a healing that's available to anyone who chooses to walk it out. And I will say this, it's not easy, because you do have the right to feel everything that you feel about anyone who has broken your trust, who has mishandled you, touched you the wrong, whatever the case may be. You're entitled to feel that way. But the best thing that could have ever happened to me was to get to a point when I was able to say, yeah, I do have the right to feel this way, but it's not doing me any good. It's keeping me in a place of hurt. It's keeping me in a place of brokenness. And I don't want to feel like this for the rest of my life. It doesn't feel good. And you really can't be 100% of who you were created to be carrying that kind of a load.
How old were you when you started to come to that realization that the way you were feeling was unhealthy?
Gosh, probably a lot down through the years, but I want to say a very, very pointed and intentional focus on the inside of me, I would have to say started happening within the last 5 to 7 years.
And that's why I asked. Yeah, I asked you that because I mentioned earlier that you and I are the same age. And I don't know if it's because because of the age or because you go through certain stages. But I know for me, now I was never sexually assaulted or anything like that, but I had my own fair share of issues that I had to contend with that played a very big part in my choices and my decisions and things and relationships and things. And then now I've been married for 20 years now to my high school sweetheart. And even with having a good husband, even with having great kids, and even with having on the outside what, presumes to be a great life, I was still dealing with stuff. And it wasn't until around that same point in my life that I started coming to terms with, I'm telling everybody else that they're beautiful. I have to be able to look in the mirror and say, girl, you all right, but mean it and believe it, even with having my ups and downs. And so I thought it important to ask you about that, because when people look at Kelly Price, there is not a time I've ever seen you get on the stage where it would ever appear as though you have a care in the world. It's like you have a relationship with the microphone and the stage, and whatever else just doesn't matter, because I'm here, I'm in this moment. Join me if you will. If not, I'm going to have a party all by myself. And that's what we've always seen of you. I've never heard you hit a bad note. You've never hit one, but I've never heard you hit a bad note. Anytime I've ever seen you get on that stage, be it big or be it small, I've always, at least what you've given is that you've given it your all. Whether it's a short stanza or a full on, or joining in with the choir or singing in with someone, it was always a stellar performance. So when people see that, I think it's kind of fodder for the internet vultures, that when they see you going through something, they don't take it seriously, because look at you. How can you get up there? How can you look this fabulous? How can you sing this great? And then, no, you're all right.
Yeah, that is me literally understanding that I have a responsibility to my audience. And I think, we see a lot of different things now. I was just raised in a different era, not just in life, but I was raised in a different era of musicians as well. I was taught by the older generation of musicians professionally, first in church and then professionally. When you're talking about being around a Ronald Isley, being around, Mariah's not in the generation older, but still there was another work ethic that she had. And coming into the business, working with her, and then working with, it was just a different day. I can remember Ronald Isley saying to me very pointedly, nobody wants to sing to an empty house, but let me tell you something, young lady. I don't care if there are 2 people in the audience or 20,000 people in the audience. You give it your all.
Yes.
Because they spent their money, they took their time, they came to see you. You always respect that. And so there is no for me, deciding there aren't people in the audience, so I'm going to mark time instead of go full out. There's none of that for me. I have a responsibility to the people that did come out to see me, to give them everything that I have. And then, the reality of it is people do look to their entertainment to take their mind off of what's going on in their day-to-day life. So when I show up to work, if I show up to work, then I need to do my job. And that's the reason why you will always see that face on the stage. I feel like I owe it. It doesn't mean that I don't have my moments.
Sure.
But I understand that that's a part of the responsibility, that you've been given this platform and people are taking their time and spending their very hard-earned dollars, and especially now, in these times, that you owe it to them to give it your all. And sometimes my all was coming from a really broken place, and sometimes my all was coming from the dressing room door where I just had like a horrific fight with my ex-husband and still had to get on stage.
Sure.
Dry my tears, put my eyeliner back on, reapply that foundation where the streaks are, and get your behind out there and sing. And so I've made music my safety net. I've made music not not just a safe place for my fans, but they've actually come back to me. And in times when I was going through something really horrible, this is, again, the greatness of social media and why we love it. I can remember when I lost my sister 6 years ago, that people came to me and said, I hope in this time that you can hear your own voice and let it bless you and heal you the way it healed me when I was dealing with the death of my mother, my spouse, my sibling, my this, my that. And those were things that like really just, it made me feel like I'd done something with my life and my gift that meant something other than just entertainment, because that's when it's more than just entertainment.
Absolutely.
And then to have it returned in that manner from someone who had been or blessed or inspired by it. There's nothing like that in the world. There's nothing like countless stories of people saying, I wanted to take my own life. And it was listening to your voice and the words of your songs that helped me decide that life was worth living another day. I owed it to myself. I owed it to God. I owed it to my family. I owed it to, to maximize this gift of life that tomorrow definitely has the opportunity to be better than today. And so when you hear those accounts, how can you not give it everything that you have? And let me tell you something. There were lots of times there was bad news. There was family stuff going on. There was stuff going on with the kid. Like it's life. I tell my audience, I keep it real with my audience. I tell them, you want to know what happens between the shows? Life.
Yes. And they need to know that. And that's why I asked you that question, because going through something like that as a little girl and simultaneously living within your gift, not even understanding at that point that it is a gift as opposed to just the way of life that everybody can sing like this, but still internalizing that violation.
Yeah.
And simultaneously walking in your calling and walking in your gift. I want your fans to hear that and to understand that what you see before you is a made woman, made by life, made by circumstance, made by blessings, made by gifts, made by experiences, highs. All of those things are poured into every word that's belted from your lungs.
It's a release. For me, it's a release. And when you all get it, it's hopefully it's healing, and it's a balm, and it's medicine, and it's laughter, and it's joy, and it's all of those things, because I am literally, when I hit the stage, I leave everything I have. When I walk back into my dressing room, I'm usually like, by the time I get to the hallway coming off the stage, I'm on a high, but I'm drained at the same time, because I have literally left everything I have there.
Which speaks volumes. That speaks volumes of your professionalism. And it also speaks volumes because you have a lot of people that are gifted. You have a lot of people that are talented. I know a lot of people who can just sing their face off, but there's a difference when there's no substance behind it.
Right.
There's a big difference when there's no substance behind it. And so I can tell, just being able to relate to some things that you express, especially coming up in the same generation. I wonder, how was it? Did you tell anybody when it happened to you, or were you, because the generation before us and leading into our generation, you don't tell. You don't tell. How long was it before anybody knew, or before you even acknowledged it?
I think maybe the first time I broke the silence about that, the 3-year-old incident, was in the confines of my marriage. I think my was the first person that I told about that.
Wow.
My sister, not either of my sisters. At 3, I can remember being told, if you say something, I'll do this to you. I'll hurt your sister. I'll hurt your, like those things are real. That actually happens. And those threats actually take place. I've been violated later in life, and I actually spoke up about it, and I was told, shh. And
was it after your career started?
No.
Okay.
This, as an adolescent.
Okay.
I was violated by someone who was close to the family. It was a man.
Mm.
And I spoke about it. I told. And the first person that I told was a family member. And they said to me that I needed to keep my mouth closed about that because it would do more harm than good.
Wow. And that's, again, coming from that.
A lot to put on a kid. But that happened a lot. It speaks to your point of the generation before. You keep your mouth shut. You don't talk about certain things, all of that. And so coming up in an era where it was still pretty much a lot of stuff was hush hush. A lot of stuff was still very hush hush. And what goes on in this house stays in this house. And what goes on in this family is family business. And you don't talk to family business outside of the family and that kind of thing. So it made it, it caused me to, with all of this mouth and all of this platform, draw back on that.
Mm.
It took a long time before I would ever speak of those things again.
Wow. Wow. That's pretty powerful. And I do think that it's important that other young men or women, or even within our generation or older, to understand how keeping silent is toxic. It's toxic, and you're entitled to have a voice.
Yes.
You're entitled to have a voice. You're entitled to be released.
You are not, it is not if the world blows up because you told, then the world needed to blow up.
Yes.
Because
yes.
Yes,
that's an excellent way to put it. Yes.
They dump the weight of that kind of a thing onto the person who was violated. Meanwhile, there's somebody out there who's left to act again because nobody's talking about it. Yes. And nobody will tell, nobody will say something, something. And those are just things that we have to break that cycle. We
yes.
have to break the cycle of making the person who has been, and I don't cling to the word victim, but the person who has been violated, because God knows I refuse to be a victim of anybody who violated me. I will not be that. So we have to make sure that the person who has been violated knows that it's okay. Never let someone make you feel like happens as a result of you exposing truth and bringing light
yes.
to a dark situation makes you now the villain. No, it does not.
Absolutely. I think that is extremely important, and thought it necessary to bring that out, hopefully and prayerfully that it can be a healing for someone who may be right now being silent. This is, excuse me, one of the reasons that I felt Hello Beautiful was so important when talking to women and girls, and even men, because they need to understand, how they view us, how they treat us, how they respect us or lack thereof, how it's all connected, So I think that's extremely important. I want to fast forward just a little bit. Your dad passed away when you were about 10 years old. Is that correct?
For my 10th birthday. Yeah, right. Just a couple of weeks prior to my 10th birthday. So I was 9. He died in March of 1983. So I was just about getting ready to turn 10 years old. My birthday comes in April. And he did. He died when I was a kid. And the relationship was broken because my parents weren't together at that point. And so I hadn't seen him in quite some time. Like he battled, he really had a bad substance abuse problem. And the last time I saw him, seeing him in a casket, was riding past him on a bus, on a city bus. And he was on a street corner and he was out of his right mind, like literally. So just, imagine being a young girl and that's the visual that you have of your dad. That's the last time you see him alive. And yeah.
Wow. Well, that actually leads into my next question. How did this shape your early childhood experiences as a young girl? Would you have considered your dad as an absentee dad? Which you kind of answered that, but if so, how did that make you feel, especially when we talk about, the issues that you had with being abused, and then also, but still in the church and still singing in the church? Because people don't realize sometimes it's almost like alternate universes. It's like you're living two lives.
It was literally living two lives, because again, you don't talk about the things. I saw a lot as a young girl. Obviously, with the substance abuse problem, I saw a lot with my parents. Like when you have an addiction, behaviors are many times driven by that addiction. And so I saw violence. I saw a lot of things as a young girl. And so the parallel, it was literally like living two lives, because we were at church almost every day of the week for something else, whether it was Bible study or rehearsal or this or.
Just for the record, I grew up in a Pentecostal church too. So trust me, 7 days a week.
I tell people 15 days, we found some extra time for us to be like, didn't today end already? So we were always there. And again, because of the generation of you don't talk about it. And then this is the other thing. And I think that the church is not starting. It's been on a journey. The church has been on in the midst of an evolution. I really, in some instances, wish that it would become more of a revolution and they kind of get there a little bit faster. But there's been so much hush hush and things that sometimes going to church, in hindsight, and I don't regret it, because I feel like my foundation of faith is the reason why I had enough strength until I could find means and opportunity to get the kind of help to heal myself. Yeah. I had that to hold on to at least. But the church in some instances was a Band-Aid, because what we would do was we would go there and it would feel good while we were there.
Yep.
This was over and they locked the doors and you got back home, you were walking back into the same situation that you left, and didn't really have clear insight or instruction on how to
process it. How do we jump and shout over here and talk about the goodness of the Lord and what the Lord can do? Then we're coming back to poverty. We're coming back to not knowing where my next meal is going to come from, not knowing, what my situation is going to be. Or, like you said, dealing with alcoholism, dealing with, a broken home.
Being in the projects, I was surrounded by it. We lived in the projects. So it was everywhere. It was the late 70s, early 80s. It was crack era. It was the introduction of AIDS. AIDS didn't even have a name. There was just so much going on. And I was in New York City, at the height of the crack era in the projects. So, it just, all of it, the poverty, the disproportionate, availability of programs and that kind of thing. The line to wait for cheese, we were ecstatic about it. We hated it, but we were ecstatic about it because we knew at least there would be cheese in the house and butter in the house and the can
and those potatoes in the bag.
Yes, yeah,
potted meat.
Yeah. Oh my God, the sardines in the can and the whatever, and it, like, we were, if nothing else, we didn't like it, but we appreciated it.
And made a meal of it. Because while you were in those lines in New York, we were in those lines in New Orleans. I know it. And we made many dishes from that commodity food.
Tell you something, when you can make something out of nothing, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to figure out how to make something happen when you have something.
I know that's right.
That is too often the case, though, because when you're used to not having anything, what do you do when you get something?
Yep. That is the truth. But you know what? But that also speaks, though, it sounds to me like you made a choice. I can either let my circumstances bury me, or I can live within these circumstances and use it as a tool and even as an outlet to better not only my situation, but how I feel about me and the life that I live and the life that I want, as opposed to sometimes some people, and it's not a judgment at all, because, everybody handles things differently. Everything that you're saying, I can resonate with 100%. Growing up in New Orleans, everything that you described was no different, than what we grew up without lights, without water. Our meal for the day was lunch meat sliced thin, and that was one sandwich. Absolutely. So I understand.
Was the meal for the day.
Yes. And I know for us growing up, we didn't really realize how poor we were until we got a little bit older, because kind of like what you describe about the singing, like it was just a part of the culture. This was just, we grew up learning how to survive. We grew up learning how to make do and how to appreciate everything. When I look at change right now that I can just throw in the jar, that change sometimes was meal for the day.
His meal for the day. You ain't never lied. Oh my God, you'd be happy to find a few pennies on a nickel.
You're looking for quarters. I can remember going to the neighbor down the street. My mom wanted to know if she could borrow $5. You know, my kids probably have $5 under their bed and don't think anything of it.
Think anything of it. I've been saying throughout this pandemic thing and being with the shutdown, I've been telling people we got to get back to being neighbors who care. It shouldn't be that there's somebody that's 2 doors down if you have food in your house that they're not eating right now.
Yes.
You could go borrow $5. You could go borrow 2 eggs to the end of the week.
Yes.
You could. Yes. We were still able to do that in the 70s and the early 80s. Like, you know, and you still had to be careful because sense says you just didn't go in anybody's house. But there were those neighbors that you knew that you could go to and get a cup of sugar from. Get some flowers.
Because you all are surviving together. This week I need, next week you need. And it was that kind of reciprocation within the neighborhood because we all were in it together. We all were in it together. And that also speaks to your down earthiness. And, you know, even when I've seen you in interviews, and I think you even refer to yourself as a diva. I guess because when I think of diva, I think of people with attitude and people are walking around. That just so does not describe who you are.
That word has been, it's been defined in the last decade or so. Sure. It's been redefined. When I came up, the divas were the women that sang opera and who were just fabulous and flawless.
The Diane Carrolls.
And absolutely. Yes. Diane Carrolls, the Diana Rosses, and I don't know about horrible behavior. I just know about fabulous women with amazing talent.
Yes.
Every time you saw them, who set a standard for themselves that had to be met. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with setting a standard. Like if you can acknowledge the gift and acknowledge that the gift should be treated a certain way, and to insist that someone should. Now that's the other thing that we have to learn too, that it's okay that once you've been elevated and once you've been, you don't forget where you've come from. But you have to be, it took me a long time to feel okay with acknowledging that there was something great or beautiful. And again, if I'm not careful, it's easy to slip back into that old mindset because of all of the things, circumstances growing up, poverty, being the poor kid, the fat kid. We didn't have a whole lot. We wore hand-me-downs. And they didn't always fit, but you wore them because it's what you wear. Nice. And you were grateful when somebody gave you something. Like, we wore our shoes and our feet are steady growing, but we don't have money for shoes. So we're going to have to keep squeezing our feet in these shoes until mama gets some money to buy some new shoes. Yes, and you did what you had to do. So between that and being taught in church, which was, again, probably a little off balance, humility is great. Humility is wonderful. Everybody should have a balance of humility. Sure. Blended into their life and into their lifestyle. And you can acknowledge that there's something amazing about you. And
absolutely. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what you're alluding to. You can be confident in your talent. You can be confident in your ability. There's a difference in me just thinking I'm better than everybody else.
Better than everyone else.
No, but I can own my gift.
Yes. The church didn't define it really well when I was coming. So if I were to pay myself a compliment or if I thought I did a good job, it would be very quick that I would hear, don't get high-minded. The Lord will knock you down if you get high. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
So I had to teach myself how to be okay with knowing that I actually, there is something special about me. It took a really long time because it was not just culture, but it was the church culture. It was all of those things. And then coming from a place of not being somebody who had a lot of anything. So I always, as a kid growing up, felt like people were here and I was here. It was harder for me.
Until you get older and you look and you're like, you know what? That's just a person just like me. Yeah. They have the same insecurities. That was an epiphany for me within the church, having grown up in the church, because there would be certain people that the leaders in the church would always talk about. We'd go to church conventions and you'd see these. And then when I became an adult and I was able to interact with some of these people, and I'm like, yeah. Yeah. You don't even have to convince me. I'm right. Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. Human, just like me.
Yes, yes,
Human,
yes,
just like
yes.
got to talk to the Lord every day to keep from fussing and cussing like me.
yes, yes, yes. And look, and they might need an extra day.
Oh, absolutely. While we play.
Definitely. Now, so that leads me into my next question. When we were talking about your dad, because I think it's important. I have 3 girls and I have 1 boy. And so I know that my husband's role in my girls' life is just as significant, if not more, than, me being their mom, especially with who they look for in a companion, how their dad treats me, how their dad treats them, and setting a standard, for them. Did your grandpa fulfill that fatherly role in your rearing, or did you have any male role models that influenced what you look for in a mate since you married so young at 19?
I did marry really young. And so grandpa for me was spiritual covering, and then natural covering as well. And as a young kid, he was like my superhero. And then there were the times when he had to step in and step out of being grandpa and be more my dad because my dad wasn't there. And then I'd be looking at him like, he was doing what he needed to do, being the number 1 male figure in my life. And I have to honestly say that looking back on he literally just stepped into what he needed to be at the time that I needed for him to be it. So he was my pastor and he was my grandpa, who as grandparents, you get to just swoon on your babies. But because my dad wasn't there, he went from his grandpa moments to his dad moments where it was more serious and he kind of stiffened up and I would be like, oh, you're the worst. But he was doing what needed to be done. And then what it developed into with me becoming an adult and raising kids, and now with adult children and having young grandchildren of my own, just the shaping of it all the way up until losing him just a couple of months ago.
I'm so sorry about that.
But he was all of those things. Thank you. He was all of those things. And looking back over all of it, I'm just super grateful that I had him. I'm really, really grateful that I had him. I can think about things that he said in moments that didn't seem like it meant anything, but
Can you share maybe a nugget or so that he maybe impacted on you?
Oh gosh, there's so many. He would have these sayings, and I think I still have one of his quotes on my Facebook page. I think I put it there when I started my Facebook page literally over 10 years ago, and it's still there. He would have these sayings at the end of church, or sometimes just even riding around in the car with him, which I would do a lot when he would go to visit the sick at the hospital and then do in-home visits for sick people from the congregation and then in the neighborhood. He had this saying, he said, I have to live with myself, so I don't want to come to the setting sun and hate myself for the things that I've done.
Wow.
That is all about self-accountability. We can play the blame game all day long. That takes me back to my point of making a choice to heal and not be so intent on standing my right to feel what I feel about who's wronged me and make a different kind of a choice, because in the long term, in a more broader scope, I'm better off for it than holding on to my right to be angry. You got to choose. And another way that I would say it, I took this and I applied it for so many years in all of my relationships, mostly as a married woman. When I was married, you hang on to your right to be right, or you can choose your right to be righteous, because taking the righteous path doesn't always land in the same place if you standing in your right to be right. I can win this argument because I'm right.
And then a lot of times you'll be standing there all alone in your righteousness.
And you're right. You're right. But in the end, does what come out of it work out rightly for you? Are you now going through 2 weeks of the nobody's talking to each other because you just had to be right?
Sure.
You know, there are some moments where being right is necessary, but there are a lot of times in life when you can give up the right to be right in order to be righteous.
Right. I think that is extremely important. And I think that's a really great nugget, a really great life lesson, something that we all can benefit from. And then it makes me wonder, with you being a mom, and it's my understanding you have a daughter and a son. So having a daughter, given the experiences that you had growing up and with your grandfather playing both the grandpa and the dad role, how did that help you in raising a young girl when you think about identity and you think about beauty and you think about self-esteem and experiences?
It made me crazy a little bit because I wanted to, and then being on the road so much, when I say crazy, I mean in that I think I was over the top in, good Lord, how do I say this? Trying to ensure my children's safety.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
I was very, very
want to know who's around them, who's in their company while I'm on the stage, where are they?
Not allowed to go spend the night at anybody's house.
Yes.
And I was very and God, like the sleepovers were happening. They were happening at my house.
Yes.
like literally it shaped so much. And I had to, even inside of that, learn how to be that parent, but not drive myself crazy, because my work did in fact take me away a lot. And so I didn't want to be on the road driving myself crazy.
Yes.
And going nuts every, whatever, thinking about, well, what's going on now? What's going on? Oh my God, could it possibly Yeah. So again, our circumstances affect our early life experiences tend to affect all of our relationships and a lot of our decision making and the way we do things. And so the way I ran my house, who was allowed in my house, y'all ain't going nowhere. My kids thought we can't never go nowhere. Actually, y'all go everywhere. You're just going anywhere that I ain't 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was most of the
Yes.
just knowing how we lived two lives.
Yeah.
We had our church presence, which never our at home, or perhaps lack of at home presence with whatever, whether it's finance or food. And yes, there was no electricity, and sometimes there was no water. And then we, again, being in the projects, you're talking about rats and roaches and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And this is around the clock, but our at church presence was never to reveal the at home presence was. Mm-hmm. It was never to do that. So understanding, just from our standpoint, how we live two lives. And then you hear things about people on the news where, no, they were such a wonderful couple and you could have never convinced me that they were going through that. And what, he beat her? You just hear all of this stuff and you realize that, the way the world is set up, most of us have become professional. And I don't want to call it phony. I just think we've learned how to make up our outside face. We make up our face for outside.
I call it Facebook fantasy. You know how because of social media today, even though we didn't have it back then, today the mask is I'll even, just my own personal situation. I used to be real tiny. I used to be really, really tiny, really petite. And as I started putting on weight, there's certain pictures I'm not posting on Facebook. And then one day it just dawned on me. I have a good husband. I have, great kids, normal kids. They drive me nuts like any other kid. I have a pretty decent life. Why should I care if somebody sees that I have a pooch? Why should I care if somebody sees that my face?
I tell people, finally, now I ain't always been there. I literally, in the last 5 to 7 years.
Yes.
And more so on the end of that 5, because 7 years ago, I couldn't say this. You get me with all my stretch marks.
Yes.
Get me with these thighs, all these extra hips. You get all.
Yes.
Little chicken.
Because that's you. That is who you are. And just because society says it's not beautiful, it doesn't mean that it's not beautiful. And that's what I have learned. And that's why I just find it hilarious just listening to you talk, because you're telling my story Even though I'm here to hear about yours, so many times I'm jumping in like, yes, me too, yes. Because that's what it was for me. Even trying to get ready for today. I was going through these quarantine pounds. I have beautiful clothes, a lot of things. And it's just like, okay, well, what do I put on? Because people are going, it just got to the point, it's just like, listen.
Yeah.
Like I said, whatever goes on under here is nobody's business.
Every other day. I switch wigs every other day. I'm sitting here playing with this one right now. Like, I should have put some more oil in this wig before we got but we do that to ourselves.
Yes, we do.
That to ourselves. I'm on day, what day?
118.
I'm on day 118. I am on day 118.
Yes.
And so, for me, I kind of look at what's happening. Our city is in an uptick right now. We're back to phase 1. Yep. And I'm like, come on, people, we got to do better. Wear your mask. I rarely leave the house. Yeah. If I have to leave the house, I do, but I'm still seeing so many people riding around. They're not wearing masks in public. They're not socially distancing. And there isn't a cure for this thing right now, but they're just tiny little steps that if we all took a little bit more seriously would impact the rate of the spread of this disease.
In this country, because we have other countries that are far surpassed us in terms of, at least getting a handle on it.
Yeah.
We're going backwards every day.
But that's America with our freedoms and our entitlements. Yes. And someone can't tell me to do. And I put a post up maybe a week or so ago. Time is just running, like all the days run into each other, maybe a couple of weeks now. I try to keep a page that is positive and uplifting so people can come and get nuggets that will bless their lives or make them feel better. Perhaps you never know what anybody is going through. That is the one thing life has taught me. You have no idea what people are going through at home. And they literally could just be one bad comment from choosing, I'm done with the life.
Yes.
But I also try to make sure that I have very candid, very candid and transparent moments with the people who have entrusted me with, even if it's just a few minutes out of their day to watch a video. I would post, we are, and I said that in this country, we are going to have more people die from entitlement and a lack of discipline.
Yes.
We can call it COVID, but the reality of it is it's entitlement and a lack of discipline. The things that I've seen, the parties that are still happening, with
it's depressing.
People, thousands of people, and I don't, life is so precious. Yes. And everyone has what they believe, but I tell people I tell people this: whatever you believe, if you believe in reincarnation, if you believe whatever, you want to make sure that you get the best life. Live life like you believe this is your only time to live it, even if you believe something else.
Absolutely.
Live life like you believe this is your one and only shot to live. And it'll change your perspective on and your outlook and even perhaps your process of the way you go at things. I think the older I get, the more aware I become of people. And like I mentioned earlier, I lost my grandfather to COVID in April. My grandmother, his wife of over 70 plus years, is now battling COVID. And she's in New York and I can't get to her. And that's I don't like it. I don't like it. My grandparents are my people. Like, that became our phrase after Grey's Anatomy. Is that your person? My grandparents were my persons.
Yes.
They're my persons. My grandfather was that guy. And literally like the last few years, I've spent so much time with them, literally just like stopping everything, flying to New York, hang out with them for a couple of days or a day and get back to work. Those moments I'm so grateful that I have over the last few years. Yeah. The wisdom that he has given me, those extra long conversations because it's just me and him and I don't have to divide my time with him and my kids or perhaps him and his other grandchildren. And but because of those times that I carved out of my life to spend with them like that, just so many nuggets and so much wisdom. And I sopped it all up. I snatched it all up. I felt a spoiled, rotten little only child that had her all to herself, and I would just let him talk my ear off, and he would pray for me 50 times in one visit. But every time, come on, let me pray for you. God just told me, come on, let me pray for you. Okay,
oil on your head.
Oh my God, all of the above. But we got to treat life like it's precious. Yeah. We have to treat life like it's precious. There are
And
so
this
many.
current climate is that test
Yeah.
for all of us right now. It absolutely is that test, because even though, we want to encourage people to value their own life. Okay, if you don't value your life, please value mine. Because your choices affect my life. I totally agree. When I originally reached out to do this interview, I so wanted to meet you in person, and I was trying to make everything possible, sanitize, but I understood. And at the end of the day, we have to make the choices that are most wise, and not the ones that make us feel good just for that kind of temporary satisfaction, that has long-term consequences.
To another time when we can again meet,
Yes.
and then it'll be fine.
Yes.
And that's what I want to get to. I want to get to the day when
Yes.
I miss not being on a stage in
Yes.
front of my audience. But I don't want to put myself at risk, and I definitely don't want to put anyone else at risk.
Absolutely.
I miss being able, we don't know, honestly, until they can figure something out. I've always been very personal with the fans. I'm the one that you can walk up to in the grocery store and I'm gonna give you a hug. Those things we can't do anymore, just out of being aware so that we are being responsible.
Yes.
We're being responsible.
Absolutely.
This disease has, if people didn't think about it before, we say that the internet made the world small. This disease has made the world even smaller in knowing that it got on a plane and showed up in America.
Yes.
Now we are over 3 million cases.
Yes. And now we're putting immigrants back on a plane and sending it back out to spread it to other countries, which is another whole topic, because I'll get on my soapbox with that.
Yeah.
It's a very unfortunate situation that we find ourselves in.
And I hope that we stand in our power, our personal power, taking responsibility of our action, of ourselves and our own actions, being more disciplined, feeling less entitled, and doing what's best for everyone overall, especially when it comes to this. But then stand in our power and vote the hell out of the White House.
Yes. Yes.
I mean,
and listen, period.
Vote the hell out of the White House. Vote the hell out of your district, your representation. If you don't like what you're seeing right now, if you don't like the response to what's happening in this country right now, do something about it. This is not the time to sit back, to lay back, and throw a pity party talking about my vote don't count anyway. No, ma'am, no, sir. That's irresponsible. It's irresponsible.
Absolutely. No, you're 100% correct.
The world to America, and the world, in some instances, is very disappointed, and in other instances, they're gasping at what they're seeing, because they've always been able to look to this country as a leader,
as the standard bearer. Yes, 100%.